Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1337B, and today's date is July 20th, 2017, and the title of the episode is Taking the Fight to the Next Level, Going After the Elite's Dark Money. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, it looks like the deep state, the elite, the bad guys, they are throwing everything they possibly have at this Russian collusion. We understand that Mueller is the special investigator looking into this Russian collusion, and now it looks like he's taking this to the next step. He's looking at Trump's personal finances, and he's looking into apartments that Trump has purchased. He's looking into the involvement in a Soho development with Russian associates. Now, again, he's a businessman, and if he was doing business with Russians going back in time in 2013, 2009, 2015, 2014, yes, he's a businessman. He's going to be doing business with other individuals. And it doesn't mean that he's colluding with Russia. He's working with businessmen to make deals. Now, Mueller is also going to Deutsche Bank, and he wants to subpoena the bank records of Deutsche Bank. He also wants to subpoena the bank records for Kushner and Manafort and Trump Jr. So we can see that they're taking this to the next level. They're trying to find anything they possibly can to get Trump. And we can see that they're becoming very, very desperate at this point, because we can see what's happening right now. The entire system that they've built is being dismantled right now. We see that Trump Jr., Paul Manafort, and Kushner, well, they're going to be testifying in front of the Senate panel right now. We also realize that Trump Jr. and Kushner, they also are going to appear in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee behind closed doors on Monday, July 24th. And on the 26th, we see Paul Manafort, Trump Jr., he's also going to appear in front of the Senate panel in public. So we could see that many things are going to happen. And again, the Russian lawyer, Natalia, would like to testify to clear everything up, because she's saying that she has been set up right now, that she was tricked into this meeting. So what is happening right now, and as more and more information comes out, we can see that this was a complete and utter setup. And just like the corporate media wanted Comey to testify, and they thought he was going to come out and say, yes, Trump was telling me not to do something, and it turned out that no, that whole thing just completely fell apart. I think the same thing is going to happen once again. If they get these individuals in there and they start to testify, it's all going to start to fall apart, especially if you bring in the Russian lawyer Natalia, you bring in the other individuals. I think what's going to happen is everything's going to start to fall apart. But this is not going to stop them. They're going to try to go through every single thing that Trump has done. And if they can find any connection to any Russian, they're just going to use that, which is absolutely ridiculous. Now, we see that Jeff Sessions and Trump right now, well, it looks like things might not be going that well. Trump is saying that, maybe I shouldn't have picked him. Now, remember, a lot of these individuals that were chosen by Trump, well, most of them were selected, and maybe they gave him a choice between A and B. And they said, listen, between these two people, who are you going to pick? Which really doesn't mean that he chose someone. And we can see a lot of these individuals that are working with him, well, this is what was presented to him. And we're starting to see that these individuals are starting to clash in what he wants to do. And we see that most likely he might be firing a lot more individuals. Now, we see that Jeff Sessions, he's taking everything to the next level, and maybe not in a good way. He just expanded the civil asset forfeiture laws nationwide, which means if they suspect you of maybe having drugs or anything like that, they can seize your assets without due process. And this is very scary, and it completely goes against the Founding Fathers and our rights and the Constitution. And the way it works is that private citizens, their assets, in real estate, cars, cash, and other variables, well, they could be seized just on suspicion that the person has committed a crime with the assets in question. There's no due process that is necessary. No conviction in a court of law need occur. Now, this is a very scary thing. Now, Martin Armstrong, he detailed between 1989 and 2010, the U.S. Attorney seized an estimate of $12.6 billion in asset forfeiture cases. According to the FBI, the total amount of goods stolen by criminals in 2014 in burglary offenses, that is an estimate of $3.9 billion. Well, the cops, the governments, the states stole more in asset forfeiture cases than the criminals actually stole. So the police are now taking more assets than criminals. And we see right now that this is a very, very scary thing, to know that someone can just take everything that you have on a suspicion. And we see right now there are some state legislators like Florida, Michigan, Nebraska, New Mexico, and Ohio. They're beginning to push back against these clearly unconstitutional asset forfeiture schemes. And we're seeing that this is going down the wrong path here. And I have to say, Mike Krieger from Liberty Blitzkrieg, he just sums it up very nicely. Washington, D.C. has become a clear threat to hundreds of millions of Americans who just want to lead a decent lives for themselves and their families. The only policies coming out of that cesspool have made things far worse for the political and economic well-being of the vast majority of us. The time for us to take our constitutional powers back and reinstate self-government is long overdue. And he's absolutely right. It's time to stop all of this. It's time to say, you know something? No, you can't do this. This is a violation of our rights. And we need more and more people standing up saying, no, this is something that we don't want. And this, to me, again, is a violation of everything that the Founding Fathers really wanted for the people of this country. Now, Theresa May looks like she's in a little bit of hot water right now, because right now it looks like she's suppressing a report on Saudi terrorism funding. And there's a report that came out, and she's basically shrugging it off, saying, no, these are just accusations. There's really no report. And she is sitting on a report on alleged Saudi Arabian funding of UK extremists in order to protect diplomatic ties and lucrative trade deals with the Gulf Kingdom. And we can see that more and more this information is coming out, showing that, yes, there were major ties with all these different Gulf nations. They were tied to terrorism, and it's all starting to come out now. We see that Germany is warning its citizens they risk arrest if traveling to Turkey. We can see there's a huge dispute with Turkey and Germany right now. Turkey, well, they're not allowing the lawmakers into the Incirlik air base. They want Germany to remove themselves from the air base. And basically what is happening, the foreign minister of Germany, he's saying that, listen, citizens that are traveling to Turkey, be warned that the Turkish officials, they might arrest you if you travel there. Now, we can see the corporate media is out there, and they are building up the propaganda that North Korea is going to be testing another missile. They have signs of this. They see it happening, and this might be an underwater test in a submarine. And they're building this up right now because they're still trying to push their agenda. And their agenda is to have something started with North Korea where Nikki Haley in the UN can push other nations to say, yes, we need to go into North Korea. But I don't think this is going to happen. They're continually trying to push this agenda. China, Russia, South Korea especially, and even the United States, they're not moving in that direction. But the deep state wants to head in that direction. And it looks like it's going to be going nowhere right now. We see that the Islamic State militants in the Philippines, well, they're refusing to surrender, and the troops in this area, well, they are fighting them, and the rebel-held area, the terrorist area, is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And before you know it, these terrorists are going to be completely gone in the Philippines. We can see out in Qatar, this Saudi bloc, well, it is falling apart. And it looks like all the demands that the Gulf nations wanted, well, it looks like they're being whittled down to 6 principles, and maybe even less. And what we're seeing right now is that the demands, they had like 13 or so, well, now it's in half. And basically, what they removed was the demands for Qatar to close all diplomatic facilities in Iran. Well, that's gone. Gone is the demand for a fine. Gone is the demand for Qatar to expel Turkey from their military base. The 6 principles boil down to just 3 of the previous demands. They want Qatar to commit to not providing havens for extremist groups, which is the deep state. It's their camps where they're training these individuals. They want full endorsement of the leaked GCC documents, which mostly boils down to supporting the GCC states. And everything else could be summarized as broadly muzzling maybe Al Jazeera. So the main demand is going after the extremists, the terrorist groups, the funding of the terrorists. Everything else is off the table. Wow, how quickly that changed. And everyone was, and remember when Saudi Arabia is saying that we're going to invade? They're not invading. This whole thing was set up to rout out the deep state in Qatar. Now, when Tillerson was in Qatar, he did sign an agreement with Qatar where they were going to go after terrorism. Now, what this agreement really was they were going to basically go after the deep state in Qatar, go after the dark financing of the extremists in the country, which means to go after the elite, the bad guys, and get rid of them. So the deal suggests that White House officials hope to use the Gulf crisis over Qatar as a way to stem the alleged financing flows from the wealthy region to extremist groups. So what they're really doing is they're going after the deep state. This was one of the major points right here that Trump really wanted. He wanted to go after the deep state, just like he stopped the funding of the moderate rebels, which is really the terrorist groups, in Syria. Bit by bit, the deep state, the elite, the bad guys, everything they have is being dismantled, and they're going after them right now. That's what we are seeing right now. And you can see why the elite, the deep state, the bad guys, this is why they're pushing the Russian collusion like you've never seen before, because they want him out. Now, they might even get to the point where they're going to try an assassination hit. Because once they reach a point where, okay, we have no alternative, it's either they're going to have an event, which might be an assassination of Trump. They might have some type of an event in the Middle East, in the United States, something where they can change the direction of what is happening right now. Because we can see right now that things are really and rapidly falling apart for them. And again, they're not just going to stand by and say, okay, we give, that's it. The individuals that are working with Trump, they're going after every aspect of the deep state, where they're chipping away and trying to remove them. This is what we're seeing right now. Now, Russia is going to be sending humanitarian aid to Yemen because there's around 6 million people right now where they need immediate aid. They are starving. They need food. And once again, the deep state, through Saudi Arabia, through the paid mercenaries, have been putting pressure on Yemen. Why? Because they want their oil fields. They want control of Yemen. And they've been pushing and making the people suffer until they give. And what we're seeing is there's a lot of individuals in Yemen that are suffering, which are starving, and Russia is now delivering humanitarian aid. We see Iraq and Russia, they made a deal to receive T-90 tanks. So Iraq is not working with the United States to receive tanks. They looked at the T-90 tank, they see how it operated in Syria, and now they want them. And they're going to be receiving many of these tanks in Iraq. And we're seeing a lot of countries doing the same exact thing. Now, during Trump's visit to the G20, he had a conference with Putin, lasted about 2 hours, and Trump came out and talked about cybersecurity units being established with Russia. And then when he got back to the United States, the corporate media said, this is crazy, this is ridiculous, why would you do this? And he tweeted out, maybe this is not that great of an idea. But behind the scenes, Russia and the United States, they are working on a joint cybersecurity unit. Right now, they are establishing it. They're in talks right now, and they have representatives from each side working on this. So he is actually going ahead with this, even though he was saying that, he was backing away from it. And I think he was doing this to shut the corporate media up. And we need to realize Russia has been created as the enemy. They are not our enemy. The corporate media, the deep state, wants us to think they're the enemy, but they are not. They've been trying to work with the United States all along. But it was completely impossible because the deep state never wanted to work with Russia, because they knew if they worked with Russia, they would want to go after their paid mercenary army. And they didn't want this. And when Assad invited Russia into Syria, this is exactly what happened. And now we see the truth of the entire thing, showing that over time, Obama, the deep state, they worked with the Islamic State. They worked with Al-Qaeda. They actually created them. They funded them. And they used them. And they didn't want this exposed at the time, so they had to create Russia as the enemy. I mean, there's other reasons and other agendas that go along with this, but we can see what is happening here. Now, what's very interesting, we know that the deep state, they're not just going to be sitting by. And right now, we're getting a travel warning to Jordan. And we know that the Islamic State is completely finished. We know Al-Qaeda completely finished. We can see that the U.S. is not going to be funding the moderate rebels, which is really Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, Al-Sham, and every other terrorist group. But the U.S. Department of State warns U.S. citizens to consider the risk of traveling to Jordan because of terrorist threats that the Islamic State and other affiliates, something is brewing there. So which tells me that something has been planned, where something is going to happen. They're warning the people not to go in this area, and it looks like something is being staged. So once again, we know come August, when Congress goes on vacation, the deep state likes to play. They like to make their move. And we see at this point, we're getting these travel warnings like we've done in the past. And here we are. Hopefully nothing happens. Hopefully nothing does happen. But again, the deep state, their backs are against the wall. And we see that it looks like it's time for them to make a move. Because if they don't do anything anytime soon, they're going to be finished. Because the walls are coming down around them. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.